Your monthly subscription box from postflybox.com includes all the materials needed to tie a dozen flies, along with some extra goodies. The Hothead Woolly Bugger certainly needs no introduction. It is by far and away one of the most popular and effective flies used in the world today. Both cold and warm water fish species have trouble resisting its charms. Begin by picking up one of the long-shanked number 4 hooks and inserting its point into the small hole on one of the beads. After sliding the bead up to behind the hook eye, get the assembly firmly secured in the jaws of your tying vise. Solder wire is used to add some additional weight to the fly and to help stabilize the bead on the hook shank. While holding on to the bitter end of the wire, start taking wraps up the shank toward the bead. After a dozen or so wraps, helicopter the wire to break it off close. Pick up just the smallest amount of superglue and apply it to the hook shank between the wire wraps and the bead. Shove the wraps up into the bead and hold them there until the adhesive sets. You can then wrap the tail end of the wire in without all the wraps spinning. Load a bobbin with the spool of black unithread and get the thread started on the hook shank at the back edge of the wire wraps. After taking a few turns down the shank, lift the excess thread tag up and snip it off close. Take thread wraps over top of the solder wire wraps to further anchor them. Then end with your tying thread a little ways in front of the hook point. A single black marabou feather is used to form the tail of the fly. Strip off the uneven lower fibers to a point where the stem really begins to thin. Then wet the marabou to bring it under control. Measure to form a tail a full hook in length and transfer that measurement rearward to the start of the hook bend. Begin taking tight wraps of tying thread to bind the marabou to the top of the shank all the way back to the start of the bend. You can then lift the excess butt end of the feather up and snip it off close. Take thread wraps forward up the shank, then leave your thread at the back edge of the bead. Snip 3 or 4 strands of pearl crystal flash free from the hank and find their midpoint. Place the midpoint at the location of your tying thread. Begin taking wraps to secure the rearward pointing portion of the flash to the near side of the hook all the way back to the base of the tail. Once there, pull the forward pointing portion back and anchor it to the far side of the hook at the base of the tail. Then again, return your thread forward to the back edge of the bead. Trim the crystal flash off so the fibers are about the same length as the marabou tail. Using the inner part of your scissors, snip a 6-inch length of copper wire free from the coil. Lay one end of the wire against the near side of the hook and take thread wraps to secure it. Keep taking wraps rearward to anchor the wire all the way back to the base of the tail. Then, yet again, advance your thread forward to the back edge of the bead. Snip a 10-inch length of black yarn free from the hank and anchor it to the top of the hook shank with wraps of tying thread. Here too, anchor the material all the way back to the base of the tail. Then, wind your thread forward to the bead. Start taking slightly overlapping wraps with the yarn to create the body of the fly. The solder wire wraps beneath should help to add a little taper going forward. At the back edge of the bead, secure the yarn with a few tight wraps of tying thread, then snip the excess off close. Pick up one of the black saddle hackle feathers and with the shiny or front side facing you, strip away all the lower fuzzy fibers from the stem. Snip the stem off, leaving only about 1/8 of an inch of bare stem. Lay the bare stem against the near side of the hook and take really tight thread wraps to lock it down, to ensure it won't pull free. Pick up your favorite pair of hackle pliers and attach them to the very tip of the feather. Start making open spiral wraps with the feather over top of the yarn body. Wrap all the way back until you reach the base of the tail. Once there, get hold of the copper wire and use it to first anchor the hackle feather's tip, then make open spiral wraps with it, weaving your way through the hackle fibers as you go. These are counter wraps which will help to protect the hackle feather's somewhat delicate stem. When you reach the bead, sweep the hackle fibers rearward out of the way. Then take several firm thread wraps to anchor the wire. Rather than dull the tips of your good tying scissors, a pair of wire cutters can be used to snip the excess wire off close. Take a few more thread wraps behind the bead to neaten things up. Then, use your whip finish tool to do a 5 or 6 turn whip finish, seat the knot well, and snip your tying thread free. Reach in with the very tips of your scissors and carefully snip the excess hackle tip at the base of the tail off close. Finally, apply a few drops of head cement to the exposed thread wraps behind the bead to ensure they don't come unraveled. And that's the Hothead Woolly Bugger. It's a fly you can fish with confidence just about anywhere.